Hello, everyone. Hello, Katie. Can you hear me?
Hi, Keith. I can hear you.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. We promised to get started at 2 o'clock Eastern. That's exactly what we're going to do. Very much appreciate you guys being here. This is the second in a long series that we intend to do to really give sort of inside information to how we've helped people, dealers, other companies with various processes. Specifically, today, our promise to you guys was to give you a look sort of behind the curtain. We don't want to just keep talking about concepts. Everybody needs to eat better and exercise more, right? But it's how do you actually do that? That's what we really want to show you today. So I'm joined by my colleague here, Katie. Katie, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hey, guys. It's Katie from Kentucky. How's it going?
All right. So if you're in material handling, you probably know Katie from Kentucky. She is at every show, and we can't keep her contained in the booth. So she's always running around. She's just got too much energy for one person to sit still. But Katie, you've been out in the field, right? You've been out at some of these Mahida events.
Yeah, you're right, Keith. We go to a lot of trade shows, and you probably know us from handing out Kentucky bourbon at ProMat and Modex, AED. But most recently, I was in Chicago at the Mojito Women's Conference. And during the roundtable discussions, I'm glad we're doing this because every single person was dealing with some sort of internal headache. Communication was obviously the most common pain point, whether it was searching through inboxes and multiple systems for updates, having inconsistent programs across departments that don't talk to each other, people relying on sticky notes, notebooks, Excel
Right.
sheets, right? In 2023, honestly, Keith, it was crazy to hear about how many people maintain a waiting on others folder in their
Yeah.
inbox. And you know what? They're not alone, right? We hear it all the time, Keith. Employees are simply waiting on a response so they can move along to the next step in their process, right? And so I just think it speaks to what we're going to talk about today and try to get out of email as an operating system, which can be pretty chaotic, Keith.
Perfect. Well, I guess that's a good segue. We want to get right into it. First and foremost, we absolutely want you to interrupt us with questions. Doesn't do us any good to ramble on for 30, 45 minutes if we gloss over something that you want us to drill into a little more. So put that in the chat. Katie and I are going to be monitoring that. And at a good stopping point, we'll make sure we address your questions. There'll be a final section at the end where if you just want to ask overarching questions, we'll make sure we save some time for that as well. But don't be shy. There might even be some bourbon in it for you if you aren't shy.
Yeah.
All right, so what's on the docket? We're going to talk about a process in a lot of companies, especially material handling dealers, that is often referred to as quote to cash, quote to delivery, our sales process. But for this purpose, we're going to call it quote to cash. We're going to give you some insights on what really drives some inefficiency in this process and inside dealers. And then we're going to give you tips on what to do about it. There's some things that are immovable objects that we understand, right? You can't replace half your staff with robots. That's just not the way our world is right now when it comes to the work that has to be done after sales needs to get the assistance of their peers and colleagues to eventually ship something to the customer and take care of them and deliver on what they were ordering. Then we'll show you a sort of before and after, comparing the old way or maybe your current way to a different way that can definitely be optimized. And we have real results from dozens and dozens of clients that we can share with you. And one thing I know about this industry is they will talk to you. Our customers will talk to you. You do not have to include us. You do not need our permission. They love talking about what we've done for them. They'll tell you all of the good, great, and if there are any uglies, they'll tell you about those too. So definitely, if you see this and you're thinking, well, I might reach out to one of my peers, go for it. We'd absolutely encourage you to do it.
Yeah.
All right, so real results. These are real. I just want to restate that. We have one client with about a dozen locations who, after implementing Vsimple, said, we measure everything. One of the things that we measured before Vsimple and after Vsimple was company email traffic. This company in particular had about a 53% reduction in overall company email traffic. If you drill that down to your level, the coordinators at that company were getting 200 to 300 emails a day. If we cut that down to 100 to 150 a day, it starts to feel a lot more manageable. And then I want to make it clear, I'm no dummy. If I just move all that information into a different place, it didn't really do you any good. That is not what I'm suggesting. What we're talking about here is by leveraging tools that make the process more efficient, tools that make the communication more streamlined, and tools that move things along without people having to email somebody to move it along. That's how you get that net reduction in email. That's really the communication is what all this is focused around. And we want to automate as much of that as possible without the need to communicate if we can use some pretty fancy tricks to do that for you. Another dealer said that the gap between the initial order from the sales rep, so PO received or verbal commitment or written commitment, to when the actual equipment was ordered, then the time in the middle where you're just waiting around on lead time, obviously we throw that out. But then from the time you get shipping notification from the OEM and when it's delivered and invoiced and the commissions are calculated, on those two boxes, we were able to double their efficiency. So it used to take them X number of days. Now it took them half that many days. They didn't have to add any people. All they had to do was leverage some tools to be more efficient. One thing we're going to talk about a lot today is how emails sitting in people's inboxes drive inefficiency. Obviously, you need a different way to do it because you can't just complain about it and keep using email and think, well, I'll just try and keep up better. That's not a solution. But we're going to show you what a solution would look like. The last thing is we have a very large dealer who wants to be $1 billion company. They were going through the process of thinking, how do we get from where we are today to $1 billion? And what does that translate to into their answer before they became a Vsimple client was, well, if we're going to double our revenue, we're probably going to have to double or more our sales coordination staff. And that really got them thinking, do I really want that many coordinators doing this kind of work to be able to support $1 billion in sales? And the answer is no. After designing and implementing our solution, they are confident that they can get to their revenue goals without adding a single coordinator. So you get double the efficiency or capacity of every coordinator. Now this starts to scale with your business instead of a one-to-one ratio. Talk about some things that we hear, and Katie, I know you talk a lot with these folks as well, so definitely chime in. But here's what I hear a lot. I hear they work so hard, and there's a lot behind that. I'll just unpack a little bit of it. First of all, every dealer that I talk to has what I'm going to call a Kathy. A Kathy is the person where the dealer principal and the VP of sales would literally say, I don't know what would happen to our business if they just didn't come to work tomorrow forever. And they'll say, well, it's all in her head. I don't know how she does it, he or she in some cases. And what they also say is, I value them so much and they just work so hard. And usually that turns into a conversation of, I don't know what to do to help them, though. I understand that they get 200, 300 emails a day, but I can't sort of break those down into manageable bites. I can't automate emails, and I can't, if we're sort of still forcing them to go about this in the same way that we did it a decade ago, it's just really hard for them to solve for that they're working so hard problem. But it is recognized, and if you're a sales coordinator and you're on here, I do want you to know 100% of the dealers we've talked to say our sales coordination team is the linchpin of our organization. They make all the magic happen, and they're the glue between sales and service and parts and leadership and all our branches. They're the glue that holds us together. Mm-hmm. So one thing we want to show you today is how to make it not so dang hard. Another thing, things falling through the cracks. I'll give you a simple example. When I talk to people and ask, what is your day comprised of? They'll say, well, I got to check in on this and I got to look for that and I got to ask for this, but I sent that email yesterday. Somebody emails me and says, hey, did you get this? And I say, you never sent it to me. And there's just a lot of nobody really understands exactly what has or hasn't transpired. And it's on the human to remember to sort of check in on those things if a couple days go by and they sort of think, wait a minute, I know I sent Katie that email on Monday. I probably should have had it by now. It's Wednesday. Now let me go into my email, make sure I sent it, see if they responded, see if they put it in some other spreadsheet or somewhere else. And that is the reason why things fall through the cracks. There's definitely a way to prevent that, though, which we'll show you today. One thing we hear a lot is there is tension between sales coordination, and other departments. I heard, what is today? I heard a couple days ago, I hear from my sales team all the time, it takes way too long to get this back. They had no metrics around it. They had no way to measure it. They were pretty much just going on the word of a few very respectable salespeople. And, those things come out in these, end of year sales summit meetings. And then coordination looks at it and goes, well, you don't send me what I need. And it just causes a lot of finger pointing that really can be prevented and can provide actual data for it so that it isn't finger pointing. If anything, it's a clear understanding by both parties of what it actually is. And then both parties coming together to say, if it's acceptable, let's stop complaining about it. If it's not acceptable, what could we do on either side of the ball to help with that? And that's something we've done a lot with clients as well. The only other one I want to touch on here is human error. Human error, I didn't make that term up. You can Google it. You can look up what the typical human error rate is if somebody's going to process 1,000 things or 10,000 things. It's a fraction of a percentage, but those things add up. The example that is real was we had a customer who shipped a very large order to Ontario, Canada, instead of Ontario, California. Simple data entry, CA looks like it's something you can't really screw up. It was nobody's fault, intentionally at least. But when we dug into what happened, it's because they were literally typing the same information from the beginning of the process when the quote was made 6 different times by the time it made it to the ERP and made it to transportation, so they knew where they could take it. And you can understand there's some math out there if you want to Google human error rates and how many steps are involved in the process. Everyone, I think, could understand how if you have to type the same thing 6 times thousands and thousands of orders, how every now and then you might ship something to Canada instead of California.
Right.
There are ways to prevent it, and that's something we're going to show you today.
Yeah, Keith, and I think every organization wants continuous process improvement, right? And when you have good workflow management tool like this, it'll allow you to improve the business processes over time. And by getting out of email alone, dealers can start analyzing that data you mentioned. They can identify these bottlenecks and inefficiencies that the coordinators are having to deal with and find areas for improvement and eliminate all of that unnecessary manual steps. So just wanted to reiterate that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've kind of let the cat out of the bag. I'm going to come back to this, but these are the tips we're going to show you today. The first one we've talked about 15 times already. Stop running your company on email. An analogy that I'll ask this audience to consider is if you were to apply the way your company and the people in your company communicate today, if you were to try and apply that to a factory setting where they're building cars, let's just take an automotive manufacturing plant as an example. It not only would not work, but it would shut the business down. If Toyota, who is in my backyard here in Georgetown, Kentucky, if Toyota, who needs to spit out 2,000 Camrys a day, had their people doing one step here and then walking over to a computer typing up an email and saying, hey, Katie, I did my step. It's ready for you to do your step. And then Katie's 50 emails deep, so she doesn't read it until 2 hours later. And then Katie reads it and then walks over to her step, bolts on that thing. And you do that times I think it's like 50,000 nuts and bolts and parts that need to go together to spit a Camry out the door. You can see how in that environment it wouldn't work. But the great news is it doesn't work in your environment either. And there are ways to apply the same things that the manufacturing world has applied for 120 years to dealer operations and other company operations that involve a lot of people in the process. Step two, I think everybody is definitely bought into this idea of standardization. I want to make sure I cover something, though, that standardization doesn't mean rigidity, right? Toyota can spit out a green Camry, a blue one with leather, a red one with a sunroof. They can spit out a million different things on that same assembly line. They're not just stamping out widgets like some people think when they hear the word standardize. What it really means is for the 90% that go a typical way, they typically follow these steps, they typically involve these people. Let's have a home that we sort of all agree is the one way we're going to manage those. Who owns what, when, how long does it need to take to get from one step to the next? What are our KPIs? And how do we tie those back to a customer experience that we desire and an employee experience that we desire? And then that becomes your standard. And then the putting that standard into practice is when you have technology or other ways of sort of not enforcing, but giving these standard processes a place to operate that's not a document on a whiteboard in the conference room that says, here's our process, we hope you stick to it, but there's really no way for me to force you to do that.
Right.
Tip number three, I think this is self-explanatory, but I do want to just make sure everybody hears this. Your ERP is not a silver bullet. Every single, and I want to reiterate that, every single dealer I have talked to says, we're looking at an ERP overhaul. We're in the middle of an ERP overhaul. We just got out of an ERP overhaul. And every single one of them will say, well, we don't really think it's going to fix all our problems, but it's so bad today. I hope it's going to fix a lot of them. And then the ones that I talked to that have gone through the ERP overhaul say, yes, it is much better than our last one, but we're still dying in emails. We're still drowning in spreadsheets. We still have way too many meetings. And it's because there's some misperception or misconception out there in the world that the ERP is going to also handle cross-functional communication. And it just doesn't. I'll tell you that right now. That is not what ERPs were designed to do. That would be like trying to eat a bowl of soup with a sledgehammer. They're not meant to do these two things. So I'll ask you guys to consider that. If you want me to dig in and give you real examples, I absolutely can. Last tip, leverage integrations. Guys, we're in a world today where if I'm down the street from my house, my garage door can open automatically. Now, that doesn't really cause me a lot of pain, but there's modern technology that if you apply that general principle, then that technology can help you really streamline and cut out a lot of those manual steps that are very prevalent in a material handling quote to cash process. So I skimmed over this, but I want to come back to it. We did a survey. We sent this out to every material handling dealer in the United States, and the results were really interesting. Sales coordination is, and I'm going to read these on the left, a well-oiled machine that pays for themselves in value. A hardworking group. Oh, by the way, they could only choose one. They could not choose, well, they are this, but they're also this. It was choose one that is most accurate. Two, a hardworking group that gets the job done consistently and accurately. Three, a group that spends too much time doing non-value add tasks. Four, a mess, but I don't know how to help them. Five, a mess, but it's good enough for 2024. And six, a group that spends a lot of time doing non-value add tasks. Oh, my bad. Those are the same. So if you look at this, the vast majority are a mess or they spend a lot of time doing things that don't add a lot of value, more than 70%. That is a big tell, right? Not one person said a well-oiled machine, it pays for themselves in value as the most accurate statement or most accurate response to this question. And really, it's what we hear from dealers when they say they are doing this work. It's really, really hard. I don't know what we would do without them, but I hear from them and I hear from all these other departments that it's really difficult. It's really disconnected. It's very stressful. They're staying up until midnight. They're waking up at 6 a.m. and texting me and emailing me. So I just want everyone to understand here that it is it's a necessary position that needs and absolutely has availability to tools to make your job so much easier. And when your job is easier, sales is happier, leadership is happier, service can be happier. So we'll dig into that.
It looks like Keith, Larry Morris is commenting that he always hears it's a mess as well within his industry. And honestly, it hurts my heart coming from the coordination world, and having to deal with this myself for almost a decade. It's just, it stinks that that's the perception, but it's the reality at the same time.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I think there are so many of your peers that we could get a little group together and everyone could talk about it. But I think what everyone would agree is sales coordination is an absolute must if you want to have your salespeople focused on sales and you want to have a really good customer experience and you want as close as you can get to all your departments being connected and in harmony. Sales coordination is absolutely in this industry key to that. So we focus on that hub for the company and we focus on its interactions between everyone else. And we get down to an insane level of granularity, such as how many people did you send that email to? How many people did you copy? How many of the people on that email had action to take? And how many of the ones copied were you really just kind of covering, CYA that wasted, whether it was 5 seconds or 30 seconds, if they didn't need to get that email, they had no action to take. That's really not doing much for you, except it's like a little warm blanket that makes you feel like, well, at least they're in the know. That is not how you inform people by CCing them on every email you ever sent. There is a better way to do it. So we'd like to show that to you guys. This is an example of what we commonly see, and I'll drill into this further, but what we see in the quote to cash process is we see sometimes there's a CRM. There's lots of forms. Sales coordination has given sales forms or even a SharePoint site that has a form where they're going to have to retype all that information again so that it can be passed around the company. That gets emailed. Emails go to group inboxes. Files get saved in, this kind of organization, literally organization that's been around since Windows existed. Makes things really hard to find. You get to name files, whatever the heck you want, and it's just not a centralized place. And then we get all these spreadsheets where coordinators and other people are keeping track of things because the stuff they're doing in their email doesn't keep track of it. They're going to have to come over here and try and track it in a different place, and so on and so on and so forth. So we'll get into that. After in Vsimple, what you're going to have is you're going to have a distinct place where everything that is in process, wherever that is, at the quote phase, at the order submission phase, at finance, leasing, order entry, all of these different steps, everything is going to be visible to everybody in real time. And it works on their phone and it works on their tablet. So people that aren't working at a desk have the same level of access as a coordinator sitting at headquarters. Every deal that will be inside there, like you see these individual deals, are going to have the information that anyone along the way would need to know to be able to do their job at the right time when it's their time. I'll get into what that means, but essentially it's deal information, customer information, communication between the customer and sales, and all internal communication, and then all of the files that support everything that someone would need to know anywhere in that process. Once you have all of that in a centralized place, that's when we can start taking advantage of simple automations. This is an example that's an alternative to the example I just gave a minute ago. Instead of sales putting together their form and sending it to coordination@dealer.com, which goes to 8 different people, this is going to say, well, at a certain step, if it is this customer or this sales rep, automatically add this person in at that moment without having to send them an email, without having to click any buttons. It's just a simple example of how automation can replace some of these steps that don't add any value to anybody and are the reason why coordinators have 200 to 300 emails in their inbox every day. All right. A real and typical result, I'm going to show you two today, is when we apply our methodology, when we apply technology to the quote to cash process, the results you see on the right side of your screen are very typical. We're going to say it takes you all 43 steps to get from quote to cash. There are 44% of them, like you see here, that are people telling somebody they need to do something, people checking on something, people updating a report, creating a document manually, having a meeting about it, anything like that, that you're literally just not going to have to do anymore. There are 28% in this example where they used to do them in 5 or 6 different systems. One was SharePoint, one was email, one was Word docs, one was something that the technicians see, and we're able to consolidate all of those into one screen. So it simplifies everybody bouncing around between all these things into one pane of glass. And then the purple one, which is also typical, is you're still going to have to do things outside of this workflow automation tool, right? You're going to have to go to your OEM portal and place the order with them. You're going to have to collect their money, and I'm not a payments or billing or invoicing system. So there's still things you're going to have to do, but the key is connecting them so that we don't have to keep typing the same information over and over again. And all the information of where anything is at any point is in this central hub where all of the deal management is taking place. All right, so we're going to dive into what our platform actually looks like. I absolutely do not want to share any of our customers' personal information because everything that we build is unique to each customer. But what we can do is we can sort of clone or copy a real order management instance from one of our clients, take out all the personal information, and just replace it with generic. And that's what we've done here. So that's what we're going to show you. So when I get here, this is the login for the Vsimple web application. The things that I have access to are various workflows that involve different people, different processes, different information, different steps, but they're all here on one screen. The real key to all of this is these are all interconnected on the backside. And what I mean by that is the order management workflow is going to involve service or the shop at one point, right? So I don't want those in 2 completely different systems that don't talk to each other. If service needs to get involved for the PDI, which is step 41 in the process, I don't want to have to manage all of my order here and then leave and go to a different place and retype all that information again. I want everything to just flow naturally. And that's exactly what you'll see is there's connections between all of these. But we wanted to start today with order management. Okay, so what you see here is, let's just say that this is a VP of sales view. The coordination manager would have a unique login. The dealer principal would have a unique view. The individual branch manager or GM would have a unique view. And then each salesperson or territory or region, they would have unique views. So this is all very flexible. I'll give you the general architecture here. What these are deals. They're color coded, and we have them in some. We're leveraging some pretty classic Japanese Kanban or Kanban or status at a glance principles, so that people can see the work that has to be done very visually, and it's really modern and really easy to consume. If my 8-year-old can work an iPhone, my 8-year-old could work Vsimple. That's the methodology here. What we see at the top are what I would call workstations. What these workstations are things that everyone has agreed that if it's in this step, that these people are responsible, and it can't go to the next step until these things are accomplished. So to look at the old way, sales asks for a quote, they send an email into a bunch of people. They say, here's the CRM number, or here's the customer information. Can you make me a quote and send it back to me? That goes to a bunch of people. Somebody takes it. Somebody starts building something. They email it back to sales. And those are all emails that are unnecessary. If I'm sales in this instance, what I do is at a certain point in the CRM, if I change it to quoting or if I change it to order, it's going to automatically jump over to Vsimple, create, for example, this deal card right here for dynamic cargo management. And it's going to automatically set the stage of that to quoting. Now, if I'm in sales coordination and I know I'm responsible for quoting, let's just say anything east of the Mississippi, then I'm going to have a workstation up here that right here you can see it says 26 in new and used orders. When I walk in, I don't have to read a single email if I'm that coordination person or manager. I know that there's 26 things that are on our plate, and I can go in and see which 26 are they and who's responsible. How long they've been sitting there is another really key benefit that a lot of people don't get with emails. So all of the wasted communication of, hey, I need your help. Here's an email. Okay, I got it. Here's an email. Here's your quote. Here's an email. Send that to the customer. Here's an email. All of that goes away. We automatically integrate with the CRM. It pulls over, creates this, drops right into the lap of the people that should be responsible for it at that step, and then tracks how long it's been there, which allows us to build some safety nets or business KPIs, operational KPIs that we can work around. So those things at the top are just variations on that. It is in a certain step in the process, which means a certain person or group of people are responsible for it. Here's how many there are. Here's how long they've been sitting there. And this is that one pane of glass where you can see where every deal is, how long it's been there, what you're waiting on, what are next steps, and you can really build in some quality control or process controls into this standardization. I'm going to zoom in on these statuses. This is a very typical way that we would structure Vsimple to march this work in process through various steps so that everybody knows where they are. The first one is if sales just wants to have a place where they can start drafting things, right? I need to get the credit app. I need to get my notes in order. They're just going to have a holding status of sales rep revision. That means coordination. You don't need to see it. You don't need to know about it, but I'm working on it. The next one would be quoting. Again, it would come over from the CRM, drop right into quoting if it saw that the opportunity status in CRM changed, and it would put it right on the plate of coordination. The next thing is it would either go back to sales rep revision or it would be sent to the customer. And ideally, the next thing is we get an order or it's canceled or complete. So we would put it into new order once sales uploads the document. Sometimes that can be automatically pulled in, or we've got some pretty fancy tricks where you can email it to a Vsimple inbox and we'll dump it into the right form. Another automation that you can do to save time. All of our dealers have some levels of approval. Sometimes it's the traditional finance leasing approval. Sometimes it's just the branch manager reviewing the deal or the VP of sales reviewing the deal to say, are we good on GP? Is this good for this customer? Are there anything unique that I'm aware of that somebody else might not be aware of? And a lot of times that's an email. Hey, John, can you look at this deal? I'm ready to submit it. Sits in John's inbox until the afternoon. John replies all, approved. Then they email all that to coordination. All of that is waste. In this instance, it would go from new order. Coordination would do their part, go to manager finance approval. They would look at it. And then the simple act of moving that deal from manager approval to ready to order is the acknowledgement that they've approved it. And I'll show you what that looks like. The next thing is a holding step. It's on order. That removes it from everybody's plate because there's nothing you can do about it for the 16 months or however long it's going to take for that to arrive. And it lets you focus on all the other works in process that you need to work on. Usually the next step is it comes into the shop. We get the PDI scheduled, we ship it, it's delivered, we've got a bill of lading, we invoice it, final review, and then we can actually calculate commissions because all that information is in here, and then it goes into complete or these are the typical steps that you can now manage as individual statuses as these things march through your company process. And every VP of sales we've ever talked to says, this is the visibility that I'm lacking. Right now, I can see anything that's in CRM. I can see anything that we've invoiced and delivered, but there's this massive black hole in the middle where everything's just being managed via emails and spreadsheets, and we have meetings to talk about it. But we're kind of always looking in the rearview mirror. We're never looking forward. This gives you that really granular, detailed level of where everything is. All right. Unless there's any questions, Katie, I'm going to go into what the inside of a deal actually looks like.
Nope, you're all good.
Perfect. All right. So I mentioned earlier the magic of having this centralized platform that standardizes the process is made up of about 4 things. The first thing is centralized communication. We're going to take any communication that is deal related and we're going to put it on the same screen where this deal is being managed. That communication is now no longer in private email inboxes, and it's here for someone who is far downstream in the process to reference if they need to, but prevents them from having to see 45 emails until they have action to take, right? Then what you also get is not just the communication, but the audit history of what actually happened. So let's go to the beginning. This was created by me. I changed the status at this time to this, and it went to finance approval after that. I can see all of this happened on July 10th. And then I can see that certain people uploaded certain documents at this time. Those documents will pop over here, which I'll get to in a second. And then you can go all the way up here if you're step 50 in the process and review this communication and what happened and how long it's taken really, really quickly and easily without drowning in emails. The next thing is all deal documentation, whether it's what coordination would need, what sales would need, what service would need, what accounting or finance would need. It's all going to be in here and not in your Windows or SharePoint folder where you got to drill into 2023, November, East Coast, this branch, this person. That makes it really hard to find things. Whereas this is, I can come up here and search dynamic cargo and it will take me right here and I can find every attachment that's ever been related to this deal. The next thing is they're labeled. We have seen some pretty wild naming conventions at dealers where coordination will say the subject line of your email has to include this, and this, and it has to be in that order, and it has to be the way we do it. And then when you save your file, you have to name it this way, this way, this way, this way. A lot of that goes away because we're actually giving these documents tags. The tags make it really easy for anyone in the process to not really have to care what you named the file. All that we care about is if you gave it the right label. So if I'm in accounting and I just want to see the invoice, or if I'm in sales, I can just come in here, click invoice, takes me straight to the invoices and makes life a lot easier.
Super simple. I love it. Keith, we do have a question. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Larry Morris is asking, does Vsimple integrate with Salesforce, as that is where our sales process exists today?
Yes. So Vsimple can do many types of integrations. A direct API integration with Salesforce is something we have already built. We do integrations with Dynamics 365, CRM, ERP. We can do some pretty tricky things that to you would look like an integration. But let's just take our Raymond dealers, for example. Our Raymond dealers get a report from the factory called a DVR. The DVR says these serial numbers related to these SO numbers or these customer numbers are going to ship on these dates with an estimated arrival date of this. Usually that goes to coordination, and coordination spends hours and hours and hours moving that information into wherever else they're trying to keep track of all this stuff. We actually have an integration where we would pull that in automatically find the SO, reference the same deal in Vsimple, and then pull the serial number, estimated delivery date, estimated arrival date into Vsimple automatically. And then if that date is within a certain time frame, we can run an automation to say, hey, service, this date is next week. So here's all of the things that we expect to land next week on one screen, which that would be a different view than the traditional order management view that all sales and coordination are working out. So yes, integrations are a core benefit of what we do, and we've designed the entire program around being able to integrate in unique ways with tons of platforms.
Right. And we always want to know what each prospect is using, right? We want to have that conversation with you guys. So definitely keep that in mind in a discovery conversation.
Yeah. So we talked about the communication and the documentation being in one place. The next thing is, once it goes from sales to coordination, I like to think about it as a puzzle. Essentially, you're going to have 5 or 6 departments sort of working together to put a puzzle together until it's ready to be delivered, and then you're ready to calculate commissions. What we build into here is those individual puzzle pieces that need to come together, but they're consolidated on this one screen, so that whether I'm sales or accounting or the coordination team or service, transportation, the shop, anything like that, they all have a home, and this information is going to be updated in this one place by different people at various steps in the process. By doing it in here, it gives us the ability to run automations. Here's a really simple example. If I say that for steps 1 through 30, there's no tracking number, so do nothing. But as soon as there's a tracking number, automatically update the stage to ready to ship or delivered, then that's an automation that prevents anyone from having to send an email, prevents anyone from having to update spreadsheets, etc. And we are going to do that. I think one of our customers has 93 automations. So imagine the benefit of cutting out 93 different things that somebody else was doing manually, that we can just write if-then statements for and make motion happen without people having to do it manually. Real quick, I know we're running on time. I wanted to show this. These are what we would call connected or backlinked workflows. What this means is, in this deal record, if there are work orders or other things that are happening in the shop where they're managing their business, I can link them in the background so that when I need to tell service, hey, service, I need this, here's the work order, all of the customer information, which remember was ideally pulled in automatically from the CRM, all that customer information goes over to that work order automatically, or goes over to that workflow automatically, and you can bounce back and forth between the things this order is connected with really, really easily. I can email straight from this platform. I have the ability to pull in emails that are leaving my internal network. So you just saw I clicked email was copied. What that gives me the chance to do is, in my outbox, if I throw this in the BCC, it's going to pull that email in automatically over here. So again, all the communication between the customer and sales, or coordination and sales, are all in this one place. And then the other thing, a pretty cool trick, is we have a lot of dealers that have to create a lot of documents during the process. We want you to have the ability to map the information that's already in here over to those documents without having to create them manually. So I'll take your template, whether it's a credit app, bill of lading, whatever, and I'll have them click a button, and I will map all of that information that's in here over to that Word document, saving human error, California, Canada, remember that example, and really saving people a lot of steps. So you can see we're mapping these things in here so that people don't have to type them again. Last thing before we open it up to questions. All of this information is actually data. We're moving things around and we're doing it in a place that's tracked. So now coordination, leadership, sales, everybody can start to see pretty actionable insights. For example, how long does it take for this coordinator to move our orders from this step to that step to that step to that step? And how does that compare to their peers? I can look at that by branch. I can look at it by new truck, used, renewed, systems, allied. I can do all of that. And it's because this is now data, whereas if it's in your email and in your spreadsheets and on your whiteboards, it's not data. This is how I see bottlenecks, and this is how I course correct. The course correct is a really important thing. This is an example, a real example from a real customer. They are a Toyota dealer. If you want to email me, I'll tell you exactly who they are and I'll let you talk to them. But this is a dealer who said, we know we have a problem. Things are coming to a point and we've got a lot of finger pointing. We think it's one of these two things, but we've never had a way to track it before. So Vsimple, could you put something in the workflow that would allow us to identify those things? We did. We identified it. It was, as you can see, sales errors or service errors. And then we put in place course correction. We put in the standard manner that we need things to flow, a do not pass go unless type rule. And this is the change over time, right? You have to have data to be able to get insights, to be able to implement course correction, and then revisit the data. And this is a good example of that. Last thing I want to show is this is how you stop the finger pointing. This is somebody saying, well, how long does it take us to turn around this or that? And one group is saying way too long. And the other one's saying, well, it takes as long as it takes. And we're actually pretty good at it. And if you would just get me what I need the first time, it wouldn't take so long. This actually gives an actual average so that it removes all the emotion. And we can start pointing at, well, if we were fast one month or slow another month, what do we think was driving that? And we can drill into those.
Yeah.
So it's 2:47 if my clock is right. I want to make sure we leave the last 10, 13 minutes for questions. Katie, did you get any questions while I was jabbering?
No, you're great. What I actually was going to chime in and say, I'm hoping you can touch on the white glove support. What I do a lot of cold calling, right? And what I hear initially from leaders is they've invested so much time building their own in-house system for years, or they're currently switching from one program to another, which we know is super painful. But how do you respond to the struggle of them thinking they have to become the experts or hire on additional resources to build what they want to see or track? Do they have to, contort their business to a DIY platform? What's Vsimple apart?
Yeah, so the quickest way I can put it is all of the founding team of Vsimple, we all were business leaders. It's very clear, I think, that I'm not a recent college grad. I've got 2 kids. So I have been in business for, over 15 years, and some of my founders even longer. We all came from a world where the typical software go-to-market was buy our template, sign this ridiculous contract where you're sort of handcuffed to it for at least 12 months.
Right.
And then our job is to vanish. Never want to see you again. You can actually listen to like podcasts or interviews with some of the leaders of these other software companies that do project management or process consultation. They will literally say, we wanted to build something where we never had to talk to the customer. And that causes dealers to do DIY. It means they have to buy something, but then they have to assign their own resources to try and make it work for them. And in this world, what we see is y'all are too busy. You don't have time to hire 15 more IT people to manage a whole bunch of tools and look at it as an ecosystem. Right. So we wanted to be extremely white glove. What that means to us is when we enter into an engagement with a dealer, we are essentially your architect. We're going to take your needs, build a custom platform to your dealership or your process. Then we're your builder. We're going to start pouring the foundation, building it, testing it, make sure it meets all the standards. Then we're your move-in company. We'll put all your stuff in a truck and move you in. Then we're your maintenance company, and I'll fold your laundry and I'll cut your grass too. that is our business model. And it is, if you look at the videos on here on our website, you'll hear exactly that. People are shocked. They're literally shocked that we would actually do that kind of service. But candidly, it's what was missing in the software world. So we knew we had something when we were willing to commit to that. Okay, so let's open it up for questions. And I understand everybody's shy, but if you have comments or questions, absolutely take a minute now and drop them in here.
Keith, looks like we lost your video.
Can you still hear me, Katie?
Yes. I had another comment. Obviously, Vsimple helps the equipment and material handling world automate the entire order work processing workflow. But it not only saves time and resources, but it minimizes errors and enhances order accuracy. The platform seems very flexible and scalable. Is it well suited for businesses of all sizes? Can you speak to what the demographic that would be interested in Vsimple might be?
So speaking very candidly, if you're a company of 4 or 5 people and you can sort of look across the kitchen table and just talk to the person that you need to do something, you probably don't need an optimized workflow management platform. If you're someone who has multiple locations, multiple different departments that all have to touch something for it to get from this end zone to that end zone, and if you look at your email and you feel like you're drowning, and that's what your people are telling you as well, you feel like you're in meetings where you're just looking in the rearview mirror instead of out the windshield, and you're sort of understanding that there's technology out there, but you don't know what to look at first, what would actually be right for your industry versus just some template that some other company wants you to buy and figure it out. I would say all of those are really good signals that we could be a really good fit for you. Last thing is, I came from a world where, around this time, we were talking about the following year, we were meeting with our IT company or our IT staff, and we would say, well, these are the things that we need. And they would say, that's great. Get in line because we're on an 18-month backlog.
Yeah.
And we would say, no. We need these for next year. And they would say, fine, give me 12 more people and I can give you those. And then it changes the whole equation of whether or not it's worth doing or not. If you have to throw 10 people at it, it might not even be worth it in the end.
Right.
So having a company like us who's going to be extremely white glove is a good way to get something done now, get it done slowly in a manageable way without being too distracting. And ideally, that's our differentiation, is we're the only one who's willing to do that. So I would encourage you to maybe put a Band-Aid over that scar tissue from any of your previous dealings with software companies. And if you really want to, understand whether or not we're full of it or not, watch our videos on our website. You'll hear our current customers telling you that we're not. And of course, if you want to talk to one of them, let us know and we'll introduce you. We have the best customers in the world, so we're always willing to talk to anybody.
Absolutely. I think we hear this industry loud and clear. So dealers, if this hits home to you guys in any way, reach out to us. We'd love to learn more about your company and see if we can help. But thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you everybody for your time. We are going to drop in a way to get in touch with us in about 2 seconds. All right. So you can get in touch with us in a couple of ways. First and foremost, if you want to just shoot me an email, I don't want you to feel like you have to fill out some 15-line form to get in touch. This is my email, keith.mckay@vsimple.com. Katie Duvall, my co-presenter here, katie.duvall@vsimple.com. Another thing that we're going to do is share this deck, and this deck is going to include a link to a workflow analysis guide that has really been amazing from what our customers have been filling it out and sending back to us. It is a really simple way to sort of ask questions to see if you have some of the symptoms like what we talked about today, and allows us to not just come back with you with a conceptual, maybe we could help, maybe we couldn't, but I will actually show you a version of what we looked at today that would be tailored to the input that you put in here. We have the flexibility to be very agile and build things on a very quick timeline. So if you're interested, when you get the recording and you get the deck, click on this, fill that out, and send that to me, and we'll definitely be in touch. So once again, thank you everybody so much. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a break for Thanksgiving, spend time with our families, and we'll be back once before the end of the year. If you have topics that you'd like us to focus on, we've got a long list. But if you want to tell us what we should focus on for you, definitely shoot us an email or send us a comment, and we'll look at it.
Yeah, bring it on. Happy holidays.
All right. Thanks, everyone.